Why is it that some people spend their entire lives feeling invisible, even when they're standing right in front of you? The answer lies in something most of us never talk about: the space between. If you've ever felt like you had to earn the attention others received freely, if you learned early that love meant adjusting yourself to fit what others needed, if you've carried a quiet ache of being overlooked that you could never quite name, this is for you. Because what happens to the middle child isn't just about birth order, it's about what it does to your soul. Let me tell you about Emma. She's 28 now, sitting in her apartment on a Friday night, scrolling through family photos on her phone. Her older brother just got promoted. Her younger sister just got engaged. The family group chat is exploding with congratulations, heart emojis, plans for celebrations. Emma types out a message 3 times and deletes it each time. She settles on a simple thumbs up. No one asks how she's doing. No one remembers she just finished a project she'd been working on for months. It's not malicious. It never is. It's just the pattern. The same pattern that's existed since she was 7 years old, watching her parents fuss over her brother's baseball games and her sister's dance recitals, while she sat in the middle seat of the car, learning to be small, learning to need less, learning that her role was to adapt, to smooth things over, to exist in the margins of other people's spotlights. And here's what breaks your heart when you really understand it. Emma doesn't even feel angry anymore. She feels guilty for wanting to be seen. The psychology of the middle child is the psychology of the invisible wound. Unlike the oldest child who gets the privilege of parental firsts and undivided attention, and unlike the youngest who gets the tenderness reserved for the baby of the family, the middle child exists in the strange developmental limbo. They arrive after the novelty of the first child has worn off, and before the protective instinct for the youngest has kicked in. They're born into a role where attention is already scarce, already divided. But here's what most people miss. It's not about jealousy. It's not about wanting more toys or louder praise. It's about something much deeper, the fundamental human need to know that your existence matters, that your presence changes the emotional temperature of a room, that someone would notice if you disappeared. Studies in developmental psychology show that middle children receive on average 30% less parental attention than their siblings. 30%. That's not a small number when you're talking about the hours, the eye contact, the questions asked, the interest shown during the years when your brain is forming its core beliefs about self-worth. The middle child's brain is literally developing in an environment of comparative scarcity. And your brain doesn't understand statistics. It only understands feelings. So what does a child do when they feel this absence? They adapt. They become the easiest child, the one who doesn't make waves, the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who learns to read every micro-expression in the room so they can adjust themselves accordingly. This is where the hidden damage occurs. Because adaptability, while useful, comes at a cost. When you learn young that love is conditional on how little space you take up, you start to believe that your authentic self is somehow too much. You develop what psychologists call preemptive rejection, the unconscious habit of making yourself smaller before anyone can make you feel small. You become fluent in self-erasure. Have you ever caught yourself downplaying your achievements? Have you ever felt embarrassed to share good news because you don't want to seem like you're seeking attention? Have you ever laughed off a hurt because it felt safer than admitting you were wounded? That's not humility. That's survival strategy formed in childhood. But there's something deeper happening beneath the surface behavior. Middle children often develop what's called a divided self. There's the version of you that exists for others, agreeable, flexible, low maintenance. And then there's the real you, the one with needs and desires and a hunger to be truly known. That version gets locked away, not because you want to hide it, but because early experience taught you that version of yourself was inconvenient, forgettable, too needy in a world where attention was already spoken for. Here's what you don't realize when you're living it. This creates a profound loneliness that follows you into adulthood. You can be surrounded by people, at work, at parties, even in relationships, and still feel fundamentally alone. Because being seen is different from being known. And you learned long ago to settle for being seen as useful, as easy as the person who never causes problems. You learned to perform okayness so convincingly that people believe it. And here's the cruelest part. When you've spent your whole life being the forgotten one, you start to forget yourself. This manifests in adulthood in ways that seem unconnected but are all branches of the same root. Middle children are statistically more likely to struggle with identity formation. They have a harder time answering the question, who am I? Not who am I in relation to others, not what role do I serve, but who am I at my core? Because their identity was formed in response to absence. They became whoever filled the gap, whoever was needed, whoever wouldn't be too much. In friendships, this shows up as the friend who always initiates, but assumes no one would reach out first. The friend who remembers everyone's birthdays, but doesn't expect anyone to remember theirs. The friend who shows up for every crisis but never admits they're struggling because they learned that their pain is less important than keeping the peace. In romantic relationships, the pattern intensifies. Middle children often choose partners who are emotionally unavailable because unavailability feels familiar. It feels like home. They're attracted to people they have to work to impress, people who make them feel like they're earning love rather than receiving it freely. And when they finally find someone who genuinely sees them, who offers unconditional attention, they often sabotage it, because deep acceptance feels foreign, dangerous even, like a gift they don't deserve and will inevitably be taken away. This is the attachment wound that no one talks about. Middle children don't just crave connection, they crave proof. Proof that they're not an afterthought, proof that they're chosen, not defaulted to. But the need for proof becomes insatiable when you're trying to fill a void that was carved in childhood. Here's where it gets even deeper. There's a specific kind of grief that middle children carry that's rarely acknowledged, the grief of unlived potential. When you spend your formative years adapting to others' needs, you never develop a clear sense of your own desires. You never get to explore who you might have been if you'd felt safe enough to take up space. You became so skilled at reading the room that you forgot to read yourself. So many middle children reach their 30s and realize they don't know what they actually want. They've spent so long being flexible, being accommodating, that they've lost touch with their own preferences. They panic when asked simple questions. What kind of restaurant do you want to go to? What do you want to do this weekend? What are your dreams? The answers feel slippery, uncertain, because they were never given the developmental space to build a strong internal compass. And the workplace? The workplace is where this pattern often reaches its breaking point. Middle children are typically excellent employees, reliable, drama-free, team players. They meet deadlines. They don't complain. They handle conflict with diplomacy, but they're chronically overlooked for promotions. They watch colleagues who are louder, more self-promoting, get the recognition they quietly deserve, and instead of advocating for themselves, they work harder. They think if I just do better, they'll notice. But that's the child's logic again. The belief that if you're good enough, you'll finally be seen. The truth is brutal. In a world that rewards those who demand attention, the middle child's greatest strength, their ability to not need attention, becomes their greatest professional liability. What you might not realize is that there's also a profound sensitivity that develops in this position. Because when you grow up watching, waiting, hoping to be noticed, you become hyper-aware of others who are invisible too. Middle children often gravitate toward the underdogs, the overlooked, the people on the margins. They have radar for loneliness. This isn't weakness, it's a form of emotional intelligence born from pain. But here's the question that haunts so many middle children in their quiet moments. If I stopped being useful, if I stopped being easy, would anyone still want me? Would anyone choose me for who I am, not for what I provide? That question lives in your body. It lives in the way you shrink in group conversations, in the way you apologize for taking up time, in the way you dismiss compliments but hold on to criticism for years, in the way you've convinced yourself that wanting to be seen is selfish, that needing validation is weak, that the loneliness you feel is somehow your fault for not being more interesting, more worthy, more something. But here's what actually happened. You weren't forgotten because you weren't enough. You were forgotten because attention in your family was a limited resource, and the allocation of that resource had nothing to do with your value. You just happened to be born into a position where the math worked against you. So what do you do with all of this? How do you heal from something that wasn't done to you maliciously, but still shaped everything about how you see yourself? First, you have to acknowledge the truth. You were overlooked. not because you deserved it, but because it happened. And that absence created a wound that's been running your life from the shadows. You can't heal what you won't name, so name it. Say it out loud. I learned to make myself invisible, and I'm tired of disappearing. Second, you start practicing something that will feel excruciating at first, taking up space on purpose, not because you've earned it, not because you've proven yourself useful, but simply because you exist. Start small. Share an opinion you'd normally keep to yourself. Say no to something you'd normally agree to. Post about your accomplishment without minimizing it. Let someone see you struggling without immediately pivoting to "but I'm fine." This will feel selfish. It will feel uncomfortable. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's a sign you're rewiring decades of conditioning. Third, and this is crucial, you need to grieve. Grieve the childhood where you weren't the center of anyone's world. Grieve the attention you deserved but didn't receive. Grieve the version of yourself that learned to hide because showing up fully felt too risky. You can't move forward while pretending the past didn't hurt. And finally, understand this. Your need to be seen is not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's not selfishness. It's a fundamental human need that you were taught to suppress because the environment you grew up in couldn't meet it. But you're not in that environment anymore. You're an adult now, and you get to choose differently. You get to choose relationships where your presence is celebrated, not tolerated. You get to choose work environments where your contributions are recognized. You get to choose friends who reach out first, who remember the details, who notice when you're struggling even when you're performing okayness. And most importantly, you get to choose to see yourself. Because here's the truth that no one told you. You were never actually invisible. You just learned to hide in plain sight. And the person who most needs to notice you, who most needs to believe you matter, who most needs to stop making you earn worth that was yours from the beginning, is you. You're not the forgotten middle child anymore. You're the person who survived being forgotten and still has a heart capable of connection. That's not damage. That's strength that grew in impossible conditions. You were never too much. You were just born into too little space. But space isn't fixed. You can create it now, for yourself, for the life you actually want to live, for the version of you that's been waiting patiently in the margins, hoping someone would finally notice. Notice yourself. The healing starts there.